So Advaita Acharya was actually contemporary of Madhavendra Puri, Ishvara Puri, uh, at the time when he was around. And actually, Madhavendra Puri was passing through Shantipur and met Advaita Acharya and initiated him. And so obviously we're not going to start there. We'll start from at the beginning. So in this wonderful book, which was a combination of 3 different books, Advaita Mangal, Advaita Prakash, and Sita Charita, by another devotee. So in this, it actually said that so in previous birth, Kuver had actually prayed and done tapasya to Lord Shiva, that he wanted Lord Shivaji to be his son. So having done this so much tapasya, Lord Shiva granted them this boon that I'll become your son in the next birth. So Kuver was reincarnated as Kuver Pandit, and his Dharmapatni Labha Devi. She was the incarnation of Kuver's Dharmapatni. So Sada Shiva, who is the gaze of Mahavishnu, and Mahavishnu combined to actually form one person. And if I remember correctly, before Advaita Acharya was born, either his Kuver Pandit or Labha Devi had a dream in which they saw Mahavishnu and Sadashiva standing there and coming together to form this beautiful person, Advaita Acharya. And that was actually the son which was born to them. So this is wonderful that Kuver actually got the chance to raise, you could say, Sadashiva, who's the origin of Lord Shiva in the spiritual world, as his son. So his name was called Mangal, was one of his names, and the other name was Kamalaksha, which means lotus-eyed one. And he was very, very beautiful as a young child. But he had quite a temper. Lord Shivaji has quite a temper. And whenever he would see anything that was wrong, he would immediately angrily object to it. And in his youth, he had actually formed a friendship with the prince nearby, who was essentially, a king's son nearby. So he formed a friendship with him because his father, Kuver, was a Pandit. So he was the king's Pandit. So he actually was playing with the prince and went to a temple of Durga Mata. And the prince was going in there, and the prince went in, and he had been told by his father that whenever you go into a temple, you pay obeisances. So when he went in there, he actually paid obeisances to Durga Mata. And Advaita Acharya, it was a Kamalaksha at the time, young boy, so he didn't pay obeisances. And the prince turned to him and said, pay obeisances. You should do this here, you know. You're a Brahmin, don't you know? And Advaita Acharya said, got angry with him and said, I only pay obeisances to Lord Vishnu. And then when the child kept persisting, Advaita Acharya roared at him, and because he was a little boy, but he roared. I mean, before seeing Tatiksha, I didn't know what a roar was. But since seeing Tatiksha, like when she speaks so loudly, I can imagine Advaita Acharya roaring at the kid. The kid the prince actually went basically unconscious and fainted. And immediately, Kamalaksha got scared, thinking, well, I'm going to get told off. So he quickly ran and hid inside an anthill. And the people around realized, oh my God, this is the prince. So they immediately called the king, and they called Kuver Pandit, and they said, we saw your son with the prince. Now the prince fainted, and Advaita Acharya could nowhere to be found. Kamalaksha nowhere to be found. So his father came, and he thought, I'll be able to find him. So he went and he found him in the anthill. And when his father brought him, and the prince was there, and he basically told his father, the king, oh yeah, he shouted at me, and I fainted. It was, and the king told Kuver Pandit, correct your son. So Kuver Pandit took Kamalaksha on the side, and he goes, you know, when you go into a temple, you're supposed to bow down before the deity. And Kamalaksha said to his father, the husband never bows before the wife. And Kamalakshmi said, his father, Queer Pandit, said, what do you mean? He goes, I'm telling you, I'm your father, go and pay obeisances. And Advaita said, okay, fine. So he went in front of the deity of Durga Mata. As he was going down to pay his obeisances, the deity exploded. And Durga Mata appeared in the sky and then just vanished. And everyone was shocked, like, oh my God, why is this happen? Because the deity didn't want that Lord Shiva is paying obeisances in front of Durga Mata. So the deity just exploded. It's an amazing pastime at the time. People didn't understand at the time. So Kamalaksha was very, very intelligent as a young boy, incredibly intelligent. And he would pick up all of the topics extremely easily. And he studied under a great teacher in Shantipur. And one day, the teacher wanted to test the children. So there was a lake in the actual back of the school. And they were playing with a ball. And the ball happened to go into the lake. And just like, I don't know if you remember from Mahabharata, when the Pandavas and the Kauravas were playing, the ball fell down a well. And they couldn't get that ball out of the well. And then someone was traveling, a mendicant was traveling alongside, and they said, hey, can you help us get the ball out of this well? When that person came, and he was wearing like shabby clothes, and he looked like quite a poor Brahmin, and he goes, okay, get me some sticks. So he got some sticks, and he literally threw one stick at a time. One stick stuck in the ball, threw another stick, that stick stuck in the other stick, like this, all the way to the top, and he was able to pull the ball out. And when Arjun went back, and every day he would tell Bhishma Dev what happened that day, and when he told him, he goes, the ball got stuck, and then this Brahmin came and did that. Bhishma Dev knew immediately. He goes, find me that Brahmin immediately. He goes, no ordinary person can do this. And when they found it was Acharya. So you can see like the things parallel. So you'll see in a minute. So this ball had gotten stuck in the pond, and all the kids, including Kamalaksh, went to the teacher and said, can you get the ball from the pond? So the teacher went there and said, I can get it, but I want to see which of you children can get it. So the children tried throwing things, tried doing all different kinds of things to get the ball. They couldn't do it. And the teacher was very clever. He knew, he had an inkling who Advaita Acharya was, even though he was young. And he said, Kamalaksh, okay, you try. So Kamalaksh, there were lily pads on the actual water surface. Now, if you've seen lily pads, they're just the little piece of the plant upon which the lilies sit, the lotuses sit. So you can't put any weight on them. You just go under if you try to do that. And Kamalaksh literally stepped from one pad to the next, to the next, to the next, picked up the ball and did exactly the same thing walking back. And everyone was astonished, like, you literally just walked on water. And when the teacher asked him, how did you do this? And he said, a wonderful statement, he said, to that person that has Krishna Bhakti, all of the 8 siddhis are naturally granted. And when the teacher heard that, and he thought, wow, only the Lord can make such a statement and show it like he did. So the teacher knew Advaita Acharya is someone very special. So at one point as well, Advaita Acharya's mother, Labha Devi, wanted to go to take bath in all of the holy waters. And Advaita Acharya said to her, when he was still very young, he said to her, mother, you're old. You're not going to be able to do this. And she said to him, he goes, but I've got a desire to do it. And then he told her, okay, fine, come to this point on this mountain, and you can bathe there, and I'll bring all of the holy rivers to you. She said, how can you do this? It's impossible. How can you do it? He goes, no, trust me. Come on this day, and on that day, I'll invoke all of the holy rivers. So they didn't believe it, but they thought that day, okay, go on, let's go on, because it was an auspicious day. So they went there, and just in the middle of the night, so nobody else was there. So just Kuvera Pandit and Labha Devi and Advaita Acharya. And when he went there, he started calling the names. Come Ganga, come Yamuna. And they all started appearing in their personal forms. And he said, my mother wants to bathe. So all of these personalities went together and formed a pond there. And basically, Labha Devi and Kuvera Pandit bathed. And they say on that same day, That pond is still there, so people come on that same day and bathe there because all of the holy rivers came into one place. So Advaita Acharya did some amazing things in his youth, just like Lord Stani Mahaprabhu did. And he came into association of Haridas Thakur. So Haridas Thakur, that you know, he was Muslim by birth, but he is the reincarnation of Lord Brahmadev and Bhakta Prahlad because of the amazing pastimes he did. Oh, so one thing, yeah. So in Gaura Ganadesh Dipika, it says that Advaita Acharya is obviously Sadashiva and Mahavishnu. And check this out. When I read this, I was like, this is amazing. So he married from someone called, I think, a Narsingha Brahman, had two daughters, Sita Devi and Sri Devi. And guess who they were? Yogamaya came as the wife Sita Devi of Advaita Acharya. It's actually Yogamaya from Vrindavan. So, and it said when Nimai was born, she's the one that went and gave him the name Nimai. So she actually went and they said, what name should you give? And she said they should call him Nimai because it will ward off evil spirits. And so Yogamaya herself became the wife of Advaita Acharya. And it says another so basically the Prakash of Yogamaya became Sri Devi. So the two were there as, Advaita Acharya's Dharmapatnis. And Advaita Acharya and Haridas Thakur, this is well before Lord Stani Mahaprabhu comes. Well before, like I said, he was almost 60 years old when Lord Stani Mahaprabhu came. And during all that time, he was the one that basically laid the groundwork for Lord Stani Mahaprabhu to come. So he basically, because he's Madhavendra Puri's disciple, started the whole groundwork and started making so many devotees in Shantipur. So he had two houses, one in Shantipur and one in Navadvip. So he would split time between the two. So at one point, he became so disgusted with the way that the world was going, and he saw the reaction of people. And it's actually written that he said that the Lord, if you offer him tulsi leaf and water, the Lord will basically do anything for you. So the Lord becomes soul to that person that offers him tulsi water. So Acharya read this, so he thought, I'm going to do it. So he went and sat on the banks of Gangaji and would offer and pour onto, Shaligramji and tulsi water. And he would roar. And Lord Sri Mahaprabhu later said, he goes, I was in Vaikuntha quite happy, but Advaita Acharya's roaring made me come down to this world. So another name of Advaita Acharya is Gaura Ana, which means the person who caused the avatar of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And so they said this roaring of Advaita Acharya, because he basically said, if Lord Sri Mahaprabhu doesn't come, I will take up four-arm form and just kill everyone. Because if you think about it, Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu. So he generated all of the universes himself from his pores. So we're all kind of like Advaita Acharya's children in a way. So he's getting very upset to see them behaving like this. So he wanted to bring Lord Krishna because he was like, I'm not going to be able to do this because I'm just going to get angry and just destroy everyone. So we've seen that like with our spiritual master, because we are his own disciples, you get mega chastisement. But if another guru comes and your spiritual master says, okay, you can learn from him, you're not going to get so much chastisement from that other guru. And it's funny, speaking of chastisement, Advaita Acharya, so I'm skipping back and forth, so excuse me. So Advaita Acharya, when Lord Sri Mahaprabhu was born and after he became Lord Stani Mahaprabhu from being Nimai Pandit, Advaita Acharya used to get really upset that Lord Sri Mahaprabhu would respect him. Because he was like, I've been waiting for you to come for ages. You're the Lord and you're giving me respect, washing my feet, giving me I'm not and Lord Sri Mahaprabhu wouldn't let Advaita Acharya wash his feet, do all of the things that the other servants would do. So he would have to be sitting there and he'd be frustrated thinking, I want to serve him and he's not letting me. So Advaita Acharya thought, look, I'm going to make it so that he disrespects me, so that he puts me in a position lower than him and shows I am the Supreme Lord. So Advaita Acharya started to preach that philosophical speculation is higher than bhakti. So he started to preach this, and to only a few people, not en masse. So a few of these people he started to preach this to. And the word got back to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that Advaita Acharya was preaching this. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent a messenger to him to say, stop this nonsense. So when the messenger came, he sent to Advaita Acharya and he said, like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was saying, stop this. So this happened a couple of times. There's a few incidents that happened in accordance with this. So first time when the messenger came from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Advaita Acharya said, really, you're telling me this? He goes, I'll show you something. And he showed him a four-arm form of Vishnu. And the messenger was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So he basically went back to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because I gave the message, but then he showed this four-arm form of Lord Vishnu. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told the messenger, okay, watch this. And he showed six-armed form of Lord Krishna's two hands, Lord Ram, bow and arrow, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Kamandalu. And he goes, see, if Advaita Acharya can show you this form, then I will agree to what he said. The messenger went back and gave the message again, saying, stop preaching this. And Advaita Acharya showed the four-arm form. And he said, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave an extra message. If you can show the six-arm form, he'll accept it. And Advaita Acharya was like, I can't. And this is all I've got. This is Mahavishnu form's all I've got. So if you think about it, that actually proves that people think that Lord Ram and Lord Krishna come from Lord Vishnu. So Advaita Acharya arguably should have been able to show either Lord Krishna's form or Lord Ram form or mix them like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did, but he couldn't do it. So only Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could do it, showing he's the avatari, Krishna is. He's the actual one that comes, and they come through the via medium of Lord Vishnu. So when this incident happened, for a while, Advaita Acharya was happy and stopped. And then whenever he would miss Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he would start to preach this again, so that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has to come back. Because he was like, until I get this chastisement, I'm not going to be happy. So he started preaching again, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu again sent someone. And he said, stop this. And the Acharya just said, look, I'm going to carry on doing this. This is the way. This is the right way. Philosophy is higher than bhakti. And the word got back to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he became so angry, he rushed back to Navadvip, went straight into Advaita Acharya's house and cornered him and said, tell me for truth, which is higher, philosophical speculation or bhakti? And Advaita Acharya said, it's philosophical speculation. And Lord Chaitanya told him, I'm going to beat you now. And he actually physically started beating up Advaita Acharya. And he said that Sita Devi, being Yogamaya, knew what was happening and knew why Advaita Acharya wanted to do it. But because she was his wife, she started to say, stop, you're going to kill him. He's just an old man. Because you have to realize at the time, Advaita Acharya is described, in actually description of him, saying he was incredibly handsome. Very, very, because he's the Supreme Lord. But he was actually showing the age. That's the difference. When Lord Krishna went as 125, he said he still had the appearance of a 16-year-old, except for, is it 2 white hairs on the side? Alok always remembers this because my father told him when he was getting white hairs that Lord Krishna only had 2 white hairs on the side of his head. So that's all Krishna showed of old age. But Advaita Acharya actually showed him being as old. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was beating up Advaita Acharya, and Advaita Acharya was just loving it. He was just lying there, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was kicking him and all this kind of stuff, and he's like, Jai, he started dancing. And after that, he started dancing, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was like, what are you doing? And he goes, finally, you're treating me like a servant. Finally, you're treating me like I'm subordinate to you. Thank you so much. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then all of a sudden thought, oh no. And so then he started to almost pay obeisances again to Advaita Acharya. And Advaita Acharya said, no, it's too late now. It's too late. You've already put me in the position of a servant. So I am your servant. Please let me make this up to you. So you can see here, Advaita Acharya is showing that Mahavishnu and Sadashiva are the servants of Lord Krishna. We've always heard this, that the different incarnations of the Lord only desire to have them known as the servant of Lord Krishna. Even all the incarnations desire that. So we shouldn't be thinking that, oh, if I become a servant of Krishna, oh, I'm just a servant. All of these like parshads of, not parshads, the actual Swayam lords are desiring to be the servant. So this is like sort of the wonderful desire of Advaita Acharya. So skipping back again, before Lord Sri Mahaprabhu appeared, it was Haridas Thakur and Advaita Acharya. They were the two main forces. And Haridas Thakur was a Muslim who was incredible devotee of the Lord, Namacharya. So Advaita Acharya would hold satsangs. And in these satsangs, he would invite all the Brahmins nearby because he was making his own like team of devotees. So he started with the Brahminical class. So the Brahmins would come and they would have prasad at Advaita Acharya's house, and then they would do katha. And when they were doing this katha, one day Advaita Acharya started to invite Haridas Thakur. And when the Brahmins saw this, they goes, who is this person? And when they found out that he was actually, Muslim descent, the Brahmin said, this is nonsense. This is what are you doing? This is wrong. And they basically tried to boycott Advaita Acharya's programs. And they basically tried to say Haridas Thakur isn't bona fide. Not bona fide at all. And this became a huge uproar. And then they basically, all the Brahmins stopped coming. And so that one day they were meant to have the satsang, none of the Brahmins turned up, just Advaita Acharya and Haridas Thakur. And Advaita Acharya turned to Haridas Thakur and he said to him, make it so that none of the houses can produce Agni for their evening cooking. And because Advaita Acharya, Haridas Thakur is Lord Brahma, he basically called Agni Dev and said, don't basically let any fire come in the house. So that evening, all the Brahmins couldn't light the Agni to cook. And so they tried to go around to each other's houses because they're a community. So they would only go to other Brahminical houses. So every Brahmin house they went to, no one had fire. They're like, what do we do? And so Haridas Thakur, Acharya, the next day held a satsang again. And obviously none of them had eaten because they couldn't cook. So they just had to have, so all the Brahmins turned up to the satsang because they thought, well, at least there'll be prasad and everything like that there. So when they turned up there, they saw Advaita Acharya sitting there, and next to him, there was some person glowing like the sun. They couldn't see who it was because the effulgence was so great. They were like, man, this must be some Devta come. And so he's sitting there. So all the Brahmins came in, they're all paying obeisances to him. They went up to this effulgent personality, taking blessings from the lotus feet. And today, and the Acharya was saying, today we're so honored to have this wonderful, amazing personality. So they're all trying to get blessings and stuff from him. And then Advaita Acharya said at the end, after they all asked for blessings and all that thing, can you reveal who you are? And Haridas Thakur basically removed this effulgence. And when they all saw it was him, all the Brahmins suddenly realized, wow, this must be some incredible personality. And Advaita Acharya, when he told them that he had stopped you getting Agni yesterday in your houses, all the Brahminical community in that area accepted Haridas Thakur and realized he's some incredible saint. And so it was Advaita Acharya and Haridas Thakur and actually Srivas. So they were all quite elderly at the time. At the time of Lord Sri Mahaprabhu coming. But they were the guys that had been there. And at one point, like I said, Advaita Acharya became upset that the people in general, he saw that so many of them were doing demigod worship, so many of them were not doing Krishna consciousness. And only there were a handful of devotees, handful. And these were the ones that were basically going around preaching. But you got to remember what kind of devotees that were there. They were incredible devotees like Advaita Acharya and Srivas and Haridas Thakur and others. So, but there were still very few in number. So Advaita Acharya thought, let me call the Lord. So when he was trying to call the Lord, he had the message that the Lord is going to be born from Sachi Devi and Jagannath Mishra. So he's overjoyed when he heard that. And because he's splitting time between two houses in Navadvip, and he was friends with Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata. So when he went one day, he was on the bank of Gangaji in Navadvip, and he saw Sachi Mata was pregnant. And she wouldn't come regularly to bathe in Gangaji because she was pregnant, but she came this time. And Advaita Acharya saw her there, and he thought, wow, the Lord is meant to take birth from her. So as she came, he paid obeisances to her, and immediately, because the baby in the womb was not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he saw, this is Mahavishnu and Sadashiva paying obeisances to me. So immediately the baby left the body. So there wouldn't be an offense of a senior person paying obeisance to a junior. The baby just aborted. And this happened like maybe I think I can remember, was it 5-6 times, something like that. It happened. And basically Sachimatas, after about the 6th child, said to Jagannath Mishra, every time I'm pregnant, I go to the bathing ghat and there's some old sadhu there that pays obeisances to me and my fetus aborts. He's like, can you please go and approach him and find out? So she was pregnant for the 7th time, and Jagannath Mishra went and found Acharya and said, please, Maharaj, whenever you pay obeisances, my wife has a miscarriage. Can you please not do it this time? And because she didn't do it that time, it was actually Vishvarup that was born. So just like in Lord Krishna's pastimes, when Balaramji was the 7th, this was the same thing that happened with Sachi Mata. So Vishvarup was born. And Vishvarup was basically just Lord Balaram, Nityananda Prabhu. So the devotees, even, you got to realize, like, the echelon of devotees we're talking about here is not just like Bhakta something down the road that you know. These are like the next super next level of devotees, and they were respecting Vishvarup. They would go to what do you call it, Srivas's house, and they would sit there, Advaita Acharya, Srivas, Haridas Thakur, and they would listen to Vishvarup give katha on Bhagavatam. That's how amazing he was at a young age. And this is how, so when Vishvarup was there, he was like amazing, and the devotees were so happy. Finally, we've got someone here that can give us Krishna Katha like this, in this way. So when it happened, when Lord Simarahu was born, there's a lunar eclipse. So the Lord was born. Everyone was at the bathing ghat. They were singing Jai, Govind, Narayan, and all that, because that's the only time they would say the names of the Lord is when they're bathing. So they did it at that time when Lord Simarahu was born. And after that, literally the day after, Advaita Acharya and Sita Devi came there, and she gave him the name Nimai. And Gosaiji said something really nice. He said, another reason why Sita Devi gave the name Nimai was because it will sound Gaura in the mouth of Yamaraj. If she said Nimai, because it would sound bitter to him, so he wouldn't take this child, because all the other 6 children had actually passed away. So he was given this name Nimai, and so it became famous later as Nimai Pandit. So you got this name was given by Sita Devi, and Yogamaya does all the preparations for Lord Krishna anyway, so we know this. And so Advaita Acharya and the devotees there, they were all so spiritual. But Lord Srimahaprabhu's pastimes, one of them when he was little, I always remember this one. He was in Advaita Acharya's house, and Vishvarup was giving Bhagavad Katha. And Sachi Mata said, this time for lunch, go and get your brother. So little Nimai, he must be probably 2 years old, something like that. Same sort of age as Gorungi. And it's hot in Navadvip. So literally all he's wearing is a little coping and just basically Nanga walking down. So he walked in when they were doing Krishna Katha. And they said, like, when Vishvarup would do Krishna Katha, they would have so much ecstasy. It was like being in the Lord's presence. Bhagavad Katha was so incredible. The devotees would hear from him. They would have ecstasies in their heart. But that day when Nimai walked in, they all saw, when they just looked around, they thought, wow, who is this child? He's so ridiculously beautiful. and it's gold. Basically, imagine baby Krishna but golden. And he said that the red on Lord Srinivasa Prabhu's hands, it looked like his hands were bleeding because it was so red in comparison to his golden body, but it was absolutely beautiful. And he said when he came up to Vishvaroop, he was pulling on Vishvaroop's dhoti to say, come on, it's time to eat. Time. And he's busy giving class, and the devotees stopped listening to the class and was looking at Nimai. And they were getting more ecstasy from his darshan than from hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And when Vishvaroop said, okay, fine, I have to go. So he went with Nimai, and Acharya sat afterwards, and all of them sat, and they basically asked each other, were you getting more pleasure out of looking at Nimai than hearing Srimad Bhagavatam? And they were astonished. Why is this happening? This doesn't make sense. How can just a small child, even though we know children are beautiful, these are like the best of the best devotees anywhere, in any universe, anywhere. And they're saying, how is it that looking at this boy was more pleasurable than hearing Srimad Bhagavatam? But it said because Yogamaya was stopping them from understanding it, they couldn't put two and two together that it's actually Lord Krishna. And it said that they used to look at Lord Samaprabhu when he became like a pundit and really scholarly. The devotees didn't actually want to associate with him because he kept debating them on logic. And they were like, well, when are you going to give up this logic and all that and actually do devotion? And they used to talk amongst themselves, Murari Gupta and Shivas and Acharya. They goes, if that Nimai would become a devotee, he would just change the world because everyone would be falling at his feet. And one day when Nimai was trying to debate Murari Gupta, because he used to always debate him, and that's Hanumanji. So he was, it's funny actually, if you think about it, I just drew a parallel. I haven't read it anywhere, but when Hanumanji met Lord Ram, he showed his Panditya to Lord Ram. He's recited all of these shlokas and was trying to impress the Lord with his Sanskrit jugglery. And I remember Sandeepani gave a class once and he said, is it Radhanath Maharaj said, Lord Ram said to Hanumanji, when Hanumanji was so repentant afterwards, oh my God, that was my Lord, and I was trying to impress him. And Lord Ram said to him, he goes, when you came at me with all your Panditya, it was very off-putting towards me. I thought he's more desirous of this sort of Panditya than he is of me. And if you think about it, Murari Gupta, the Lord showed him so much Panditya in that birth. He was sick of it and he thought, I don't want to associate with the Lord if he keeps every time coming to debate me. So it's a wonderful parallel there. On one hand, when Hanumanji met Lord Ram, it was the same situation. But Lord Srinivasa met Murari Gupta, it was the same situation. So Murari Gupta, one day, he saw Lord Srinivasa from a distance coming as Nimai Pandit, and he just turned away and ran. And Lord Srinivasa Prabhu turned to one of his friends that was with him. Friend didn't understand it, and he said, you watch, one day these same devotees will be coming and touching my feet. Because one day, he goes, you see, all of these devotees will be clamoring for my attention. And so basically, there's so many leelas with Advaita Acharya and Lord Srinivasa Prabhu. And it's just we owe everything to Advaita Acharya, to bringing Lord Srinivasa Prabhu, Lord Nityanand Prabhu. And there's always that vision of when Lord Srinivasa Prabhu would sit down to eat, on one side would be Advaita Acharya, the other side Nityanand Prabhu, and they would eat like incredible feast, having jokes, taking the mickey out of each other. And you know what? It's wonderful to see those kind of pastimes. They weren't just personalities that sat around and just like was, all rigid and that kind of stuff. It was the dynamic, wonderful relationship that really continues like that. So sorry to take up so much time. You get a bit sort of involved when you start speaking of these pastimes. So I hope you enjoyed this and narration little of Advaita Acharya's Leelas. Please forgive me if I've made any mistake or forgotten any of the details. But I just wanted to glorify Advaita Acharya.